The stars had never looked so cold. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the viewport of the diplomatic vessel steadfast, watching the massive space station grow larger with each passing minute. Axiom Prime, the capital of the Galactic Sovereignty Council, a structure so old that humans were still living in caves when it was built. Ambassador, we are receiving docking instructions, said Captain Marcus Chen from behind her. Elena nodded but did not turn around. She had prepared for this moment her entire career. First contact with alien life had happened 60 years ago, when humanity was still learning to walk among the stars. Since then, they had learned a simple truth. The galaxy was not empty. It was ruled. 12 ancient species controlled everything. They called themselves the Galactic Sovereignty Council, and they had held power for 40,000 years. Humanity, with its 12 small colony worlds and its young civilization, was nothing to them, a minor species. Insects building tiny hills in the shadow of giants, and now the giants had called. The steadfast docked with a gentle shudder. Elena straightened her uniform and walked toward the airlock. Captain Chen fell into step beside her. Do we know what they want? He asked quietly. No, Elena replied. But I doubt it is good news. The Council does not invite minor species for friendly conversation. The airlock opened, and they stepped into Axiom Prime. Elena had seen impressive things in her life. She had stood on the glass plains of Titan and watched Saturn rise. She had walked through the ancient forests of New Eden. But nothing had prepared her for this. The corridor stretched before them like the throat of some massive beast. The walls were made of a metal that seemed to shift and flow like liquid. Lights floated in the air without any visible source. And everywhere, there were aliens. Creatures with too many eyes. Beings made of what looked like living crystal. Things that floated and things that crawled. All of them moving with purpose. All of them ignoring the two humans completely. A floating drone appeared before them. Ambassador Vasquez, you will follow. They followed. The grand convocation hall was larger than any building on Earth. The ceiling disappeared into darkness high above. Thousands of seats rose in circles around a central platform, and in those seats sat the representatives of 100 conquered species. All watching, all silent. On the central platform stood 12 figures. The council itself, Elena recognized some of them from intelligence reports. The Velthari, tall and thin with silver skin. The Morvathi, squat and powerful with 4 arms. And at the center, towering above the others, stood a creature that made her blood run cold. High Arbiter Jalketh of the Kethmari. He was insectoid, nearly 3 meters tall, with a hard black shell and eyes that reflected no light. His species had ruled the council for the last 8,000 years. They were known for one thing, above all others. They did not show mercy. Human, Jalketh said. His voice was like stones grinding together. You stand before the Galactic Sovereignty Council. You will listen. You will not speak until permitted. Elena clasped her hands behind her back and said nothing. Your species has been observed, Jalketh continued. For 60 of your years, we have watched you spread across 12 worlds. We have seen your ships. We have studied your people. We have made our assessment. He paused. The silence in the hall was absolute. Humanity has been found acceptable for integration into the sovereignty. You should feel honored. Many species are simply destroyed. You will be allowed to continue existing. Elena felt Captain Chen tense beside her. She kept her face perfectly still. The terms of integration are as follows, Jalketh said. 40% of all human industrial output will be paid as annual tribute to the Council. All human citizens will submit to genetic cataloging. 3 of your colony worlds will be surrendered for resource redistribution. Your military forces will be reduced to ceremonial numbers only, and a council overseer will be installed on your homeworld with absolute authority over your governments. The words hit Elena like physical blows. 40% of everything they produced. Their genetic information in alien hands. 3 worlds, millions of people. Simply handed over. their military destroyed, a foreign master sitting on Earth itself. These terms are not negotiable, Jalketh said. Every species in this galaxy has accepted them. Those who refused no longer exist. The Velthari resisted 3,000 years ago. Their homeworld is now a dead rock. Their people serve us as slaves. When the Skyme, a lot of that wearing Talonian, he leaned forward, and Elena could see her own reflection in his dark eyes. We command a fleet of 2 million warships. Your species has less than 1,000. Resistance is not merely foolish. It is impossible. You have 30 of your solar days to return with your government's acceptance. For a long moment, Elena simply stared at him. Then she spoke, her voice calm and clear. And if we do not accept? A sound rippled through the hall. It took Elena a moment to realize it was laughter. Hundreds of alien voices. Laughing at the very idea. Jalketh did not laugh. His eyes fixed on Elena, with something that might have been curiosity. Then you will be destroyed. Your worlds will be burned. Your people will be scattered across the galaxy as slaves. Your name will be forgotten. You will be nothing, less than nothing. He straightened. Go now, human, deliver our terms, and pray your leaders are wiser than you appear to be. The journey back to the Steadfast passed in silence. Elena did not speak. Captain Chen did not ask questions. They walked through those flowing corridors, past those countless aliens, and Elena felt every eye upon her. Only when they were back aboard their ship, only when the airlock had sealed behind them, did Chen finally speak. Ambassador, what are you going to tell them? What are you going to recommend? Elena walked to the viewport. Outside, she could see the sovereignty dreadnoughts that surrounded them. Each one was larger than any human ship ever built. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy a planet. 2 million of them. Against 800 human vessels, she thought about her daughter on Earth. She thought about the colonists on Kepler's Hope, building homes and planting crops under an alien sun. She thought about 40,000 years of alien rule, and the countless species who had knelt before the council. She thought about what it meant to be human. I am going to tell them the truth, Elena said quietly. Every word of it. And then I am going to recommend that we tell these bastards no. Chen stared at her. Ambassador. That is suicide. You heard them. 2 million ships. Elena turned to face him. There was fire in her eyes. Captain, my grandmother used to tell me stories about our ancestors. People who faced impossible odds. People who were told to kneel and refused. People who died on their feet rather than live on their knees. She shook her head. Maybe we will lose. Maybe they will destroy us. But I would rather humanity end in fire than live forever in chains. She looked back at the stars. Set course for Earth, Captain. We have a message to deliver. The Steadfast turned away from Axiom Prime and jumped into the darkness between stars. Behind them, the Council waited, confident in their power. They had no idea what was coming. The United Terran Assembly had never been so full. Every seat was taken. Representatives from Earth and all 12 colony worlds sat in their places, their faces pale and serious. Journalists crowded every corner. Outside the great building in Geneva, millions of people had gathered, watching on massive screens. Across the human worlds, billions more watched from their homes. Everyone knew what was at stake. Chancellor Yuki Tanaka stood at the central podium, her hands gripping the edges until her knuckles turned white. She was 63 years old and had led humanity through 2 economic crises and a near war with the outer colonies. None of that had prepared her for this moment. The assembly will come to order, she said. Her voice was steady, but those who knew her could hear the strain beneath it. Ambassador Vasquez, please deliver your report. Elena Vasquez walked to the podium. She carried no notes. She did not need them. The words were burned into her memory. For 20 minutes, she spoke. She told them about Axiom Prime, about the Grand Convocation Hall, about the 12 ancient species who ruled the galaxy like gods, and she told them about High Arbiter Jalketh and his demands. When the holographic recording played, showing the massive insectoid alien delivering his ultimatum, The hall fell absolutely silent. Elena watched the faces of the representatives. She saw fear, she saw anger, she saw despair. When the recording ended, the silence continued for a long moment. Then, slowly, the shouting began. It took Chancellor Tanaka 10 minutes to restore order. When she finally succeeded, she called the first speaker to the floor. Minister David Okonkwo of the Defense Council stood. He was a tall man, gray-haired and straight-backed, with the bearing of a soldier. His son James commanded the Terran Defense Force. "The numbers do not lie," he said, his voice heavy. "We have 847 combat vessels. They have 2 million. For every ship we destroy, they can send 2,000 more. If we fight, we die. All of us. Every man, woman, and child in human space." Shouts erupted from one side of the hall. Minister Okonkwo raised his hand. "I am not saying we should surrender. I am saying we must understand what we face. This is not a battle we can win with courage alone. We need time. We need to build. We need to find allies. If we refuse now, without preparation, we simply die." He sat down. Another representative stood. The debate raged for 9 days. Some spoke of survival. "Better to live as servants than die as free people," they said. The tribute was harsh. But humanity would endure. Their children would endure. Someday, perhaps, things would change. Others spoke of pride. What was the point of survival if it meant giving up everything that made humanity human? Their ancestors had fought and died for freedom. Were they supposed to simply throw that away? Colony representatives from Kepler's Hope spoke of their homes, their farms, their children. Were they supposed to simply hand over their world to aliens who would strip it bare? Representatives from the Mars Collective spoke of practicality. The Council had ruled for 40,000 years. Rebellion was not merely difficult. It was impossible. Outside the assembly, the debate spread across all human space. Families argued over dinner tables. Friends stopped speaking to each other. Protests filled the streets, some demanding surrender, others burning effigies of the alien council. On the 8th day, Admiral James Okonkwo requested permission to address the assembly. He was not a politician. He had never spoken to this body before. But his request was granted. He walked to the podium in his uniform, medals gleaming on his chest. He was younger than his father, with the same tall frame and serious eyes. "I am a soldier," he said. "I have spent my life studying war. I know the numbers. I know what we face. And I know that everyone in this room is afraid." He paused. "I am afraid too." The admission hung in the air. "But I want to tell you about something my grandmother taught me when I was a boy. She used to tell me stories about our ancestors. Not the famous ones. The ordinary ones. Farmers who picked up weapons when invaders came. Workers who went on strike against impossible odds. Ordinary people who were told to bow down and refused." His voice grew stronger. "They did not win because they were stronger. They did not win because they had better weapons. They won because they decided that some things are worth more than survival. They won because they would rather die free than live in chains." He looked around the hall. "The Council has ruled for 40,000 years because every species they met decided that survival was more important than freedom. They knelt because they were afraid. And they are still kneeling. 2,000. He slammed his fist on the podium. "Are we going to kneel? Are we going to tell our children that we had a chance to stand up, and we were too afraid to take it? Are we going to spend the rest of our existence as servants, always wondering what might have happened if we had been brave?" He shook his head. "I would rather die tomorrow as a free man than live 1,000 years as a slave. And I do not think I am alone." The hall erupted. Some cheered, some shouted in anger. Chancellor Tanaka struggled to maintain order. When silence finally returned, one more person asked to speak. Her name was Amara Osei. She was a historian from the Mars Collective, a civilian delegate with no military rank and no political power. She was 34 years old, and she had never addressed the assembly before. She walked to the podium with quiet dignity. "I am not a soldier," she said. "I am not a politician. I study history. I study the stories of people who lived and died long before we reached the stars." She looked out at the silent representatives. "My grandmother survived the Lagos collapse of 2089. She was 19 years old when her city fell into chaos. She had nothing. No food. No shelter. No hope. Everyone told her to run. Everyone told her it was impossible to rebuild." Amara's voice was soft, but it carried through the hall. She did not run. She stayed. She organized her neighbors. She found food. She built shelters. She rebuilt her city, brick by brick, with her bare hands, because someone told her it was impossible, and she decided that she did not care. She paused. "The council has ruled for 40,000 years because no one has ever told them no and meant it. They expect us to kneel because everyone else has knelt. They believe we will surrender because surrender is the logical choice." She straightened her shoulders. "Perhaps it is time to be illogical. Perhaps it is time to tell them no." The vote was held on the 10th day. 1,447 representatives. Each one carrying the weight of billions of lives. Each one knowing that their vote might lead to the destruction of humanity. The count took 3 hours. When it was finished, Chancellor Tanaka stood at the podium, her face gray with exhaustion. "The votes have been counted," she said. 729 in favor of resistance. 718 in favor of negotiation, a margin of 12 votes. Humanity had chosen to fight. That night, Chancellor Tanaka addressed the human race. Every screen on every world carried her words. She stood before the camera with tears in her eyes but steel in her voice. She spoke of the choice they had made. She spoke of the danger they faced. She spoke of the possibility that they might all die. And then she spoke 5 words that would echo through history. "We will not yield." Across human space, billions of people heard those words. Some wept, some cheered. Some simply sat in silence, knowing that everything had changed. In the darkness of space, the message traveled outward at the speed of light. Humanity had given its answer. The council did not attack immediately. This surprised everyone. Admiral Okonkwo had expected fire and death within days of humanity's refusal. Instead, the council sent a message. They offered an extension. More time to reconsider. "They want us to break on our own," Director Sarah Lynn explained during the Emergency Military Council. She was the head of Terran intelligence, a small woman with sharp eyes and a mind like a razor. "They have ruled for 40,000 years. They do not want to destroy us. They want us to kneel. They want the galaxy to watch us surrender. Then we use the time," Admiral Okonkwo said. "Every day they give us is a day we can prepare." And so began the greatest mobilization in human history. They called it Project Prometheus. Every shipyard in human space ran triple shifts. Factories that had made farming equipment now made weapons. Civilian transports were stripped down and rebuilt as warships. The entire economy transformed overnight into a machine of war. Volunteers flooded the recruitment centers. For every soldier needed, 10 people applied. Grandmothers who had never held a weapon learned to fire a rifle. Children too young to fight collected scrap metal for the war effort. Humanity had made its choice. And now, humanity committed to that choice completely. Admiral Okonkwo established his command on the colony world of New Helsinki, far from Earth. If Earth fell, the resistance would continue. He gathered his officers around him, the best military minds humanity had produced. "We cannot win by fighting their way," he told them. "We are outnumbered 1,000 to 1. If we meet them in open battle, we die. So we will not fight their way. We will fight our way." Human military doctrine was rewritten from the ground up: speed over size, stealth over strength, strike hard, strike fast, disappear before the enemy can respond. But they needed something more. They needed an edge. They found it on Titan. Dr. Yusuf Kadir was a physicist who had spent his entire career studying faster-than-light travel. He was brilliant but considered eccentric. obsessed with ideas that other scientists dismissed as impossible. When the war began, the military gave him unlimited resources and a simple instruction: find us something we can use. 6 months later, he called Admiral Okonkwo with excitement shaking in his voice. I found it, he said. The Council uses fixed jump points for faster-than-light travel. Every species does. They think it is the only way. But it is not. I have found another way. He called it asymmetric jump technology. It allowed ships to appear anywhere in space, at any time, without using the predictable jump points that the Council monitored. It was dangerous. It was unreliable, and it changed everything. They cannot defend against what they cannot predict, Kadir explained. Their entire strategy depends on controlling the jump points. With this technology, we bypass their strategy entirely. The first asymmetric drive was installed on a small scout ship. When it successfully jumped behind enemy lines and returned, the news spread through the military like wildfire. Hope. For the first time since the ultimatum, humans felt real hope. But Director Lin knew that technology alone would not be enough. She had studied the Council for years. She knew their weaknesses. And she knew their greatest weakness was not military. It was political. The Council ruled through fear, not loyalty. Their subject species did not love them. They obeyed because the alternative was death. For 40,000 years, no one had shown them another way. Lin intended to show them. Her agents spread through Council space like ghosts. They traveled on trading ships. They disguised themselves as servants. They listened and watched and waited, and they found exactly what Lin had hoped to find. The Drethkai were a warrior species, proud and fierce. 6,000 years ago, they had refused to submit to the Council. The Council had responded by capturing their homeworld and holding it hostage. The Drethkai were given a choice: serve as slave soldiers, or watch their world burn. They chose to serve. For 6,000 years, their warriors had fought and died for masters they hated. Their homeworld remained under Council control, its population hostages, to ensure Drethkai loyalty. Lin's agents made contact with Drethkai commanders. They asked simple questions. Are you happy? Do you want to serve forever? What would you do if you had another choice? The answers were always the same. The Drethkai hated the Council with a fire that had burned for 6 millennia. They would do anything to be free. Lin gave them something no one had ever given them before: hope. She provided them with intelligence about their homeworld's defenses. She showed them that the shield codes could be obtained. She promised that if they rose up, humanity would stand with them. And she asked them one question: when the moment comes, will you fight? The Drethkai said yes. Lin found others. The Morvathi, whose tribute had increased every century until their children went hungry. The Velthari, reduced from a proud civilization to broken servants. A dozen species, all of them crushed under the Council's boot, all of them dreaming of freedom. She whispered the same message to all of them: you are not alone. There is another way. When the moment comes, be ready. Meanwhile, on New Helsinki, engineer Tomas Virtanen completed a project that had consumed 3 years of his life. The Hammer-class siege platform was massive, larger than any weapon humanity had ever built. It was not designed for defense. It was designed for attack. Its main cannon could crack planetary shields from light years away. Admiral Okonkwo came to see the completed platform. He stood before the massive structure, his face unreadable. You know what this is, Virtanen said quietly. This is not a defensive weapon. This is a weapon of terror. With this, we can threaten their worlds the way they threaten ours. Okonkwo nodded slowly. I know. I have spent 3 years building it, Virtanen continued, and I still do not know if I have built salvation or damnation. Okonkwo put his hand on the engineer's shoulder. Neither do I. But I know this. We did not start this war. We did not ask for this choice. We are simply doing what we must to survive. 3 years passed. 3 years of building and training and preparing. 3 years of quiet diplomacy in the shadows. 3 years of hope and fear and determination. And then, finally, the council moved. Intelligence Director Lin received the report on a cold morning. Her face went pale as she read it. Subjugator Fleet Omega. 300,000 warships. Dispatched to make an example of humanity. They were not coming for Earth. Not yet. They were coming for Kepler's hope. A farming world of 4 million people. The council intended to burn it to ash. A warning to humanity and the entire galaxy. This is what happens to those who refuse. Lin brought the news to Admiral Okonkwo. He read the report in silence. When he finished, he set it down and looked out the window at the stars. How long? 47 days, Lin replied. They are taking their time. They want the galaxy to watch. How many ships do we have ready? 312 combat-ready vessels. 312 against 300,000. Less than 1 in 1,000. Okonkwo was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to face Lin, and there was something fierce in his eyes. Get me my officers, he said. All of them. And contact our friends among the Drethkai. Tell them the moment is coming. Lin nodded and turned to leave. At the door, she paused. Admiral, can we win this? Okonkwo smiled grimly. Probably not, but we can make them bleed. We can show the galaxy that the council can be hurt, and maybe that will be enough. He looked back at the stars. 312 ships, then we had better make them count. The countdown to the Battle of Kepler's Hope had begun. The subjugator fleet arrived in perfect formation. 300,000 warships emerged from the jump point in waves, each wave larger than humanity's entire military. They spread across the Kepler system like a metal plague, blotting out the stars. At their center flew the flagship of Fleetmaster Vorthal, a Kethmari commander who had crushed 43 rebellions in his career. He stood on his bridge, watching the tactical display with calm satisfaction. The human colony world hung in space before him. Blue and green and fragile. 4 million lives, waiting to be snuffed out. Scan the system, Vorthal commanded. Find their fleet. His officers obeyed. Minutes passed. Then one of them turned with confusion on his face. Fleetmaster, we detect only minimal defenses. A few orbital platforms. No significant fleet presence. Vorthal's mandibles clicked with amusement. They have fled. They know they cannot win. They have abandoned their own people. He felt something like disappointment. He had hoped the humans would fight. It had been so long since anyone had truly resisted. Still, orders were orders. The colony would burn. The message would be sent. Begin approach, he commanded. Prepare bombardment sequence. The massive fleet began to move toward Kepler's Hope. 300,000 ships, advancing in perfect formation, unstoppable and inevitable. They never saw it coming. Admiral Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the Defiant, his flagship, watching the enemy fleet through sensors that reached across light years. His 312 ships were not hiding. They were waiting. They have entered the kill zone, his tactical officer reported. Okonkwo nodded. All ships, activate asymmetric drives. Jump on my mark. Jump on my mark. 312 ships powered up their revolutionary new engines. 312 crews said silent prayers. 312 captains gripped their armrests and waited. Mark. Reality twisted. The human fleet vanished from their hiding spot behind Kepler's largest moon and reappeared inside the enemy formation. Not in front of them. Not behind them. Inside them. The first salvo was fired at point-blank range. Human ships appeared mere kilometers from council vessels and opened fire before the enemy could react. 17 sovereignty cruisers exploded in the first 3 seconds. 20 more in the next 5. Chaos erupted. The council fleet had not fought a real battle in 3,000 years. Their tactics were designed for intimidation, not combat. They expected enemies to meet them at the jump point, to fight in neat formations, to die in an orderly fashion. They did not expect enemies to appear inside their lines and fight like demons. Human ships darted through the massive formation like wasps attacking a bear. They were smaller, faster, more maneuverable. They struck and vanished and struck again. using their asymmetric drives to jump short distances, appearing where the enemy least expected them. Fleet Master Vorthal screamed orders. "Reform the line, target their flagship, destroy them," but the human ships were too fast. Every time the Council ships locked on, their targets disappeared. Every time they formed a defensive position, humans appeared behind them and opened fire. Still, numbers were numbers. For every Council ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. The human fleet was taking losses. The Defiant shuddered as enemy fire struck its shields. Admiral Okonkwo watched his tactical display and saw his ships winking out, one by one. 312 became 200. Then 150. Then 100. "Admiral," his first officer said, voice tight with controlled fear. "We cannot sustain these losses. We need to withdraw." Okonkwo shook his head. "Not yet. Watch the Drethkai contingent." Mixed within the subjugator fleet were 50,000 Drethkai warships, crewed by slave soldiers who had served the Council for 6,000 years. They had received a message 3 days ago, transmitted by Director Lin's agents. It contained 2 things. The first was the shield codes for their homeworld, stolen by human intelligence at terrible cost. Codes that would allow them to liberate their people. The second was a question: will you die on your knees, or live on your feet? Fleet Master Vorthal was focused on the human ships when his tactical officer made a sound of confusion. "Fleet Master, the Drethkai vessels are breaking formation." Vorthal turned. "What?" On his display, 50,000 ships were turning. Not toward the humans, toward the Council fleet. "They are targeting us," the tactical officer said, his voice rising with disbelief. "The Drethkai are targeting us." The Drethkai opened fire. 50,000 ships, crewed by warriors who had dreamed of this moment for 6,000 years, turned their weapons on their masters. The surprise was total. Council ships exploded by the hundreds, caught completely off guard by their own allies. Across the Drethkai fleet, commanders broadcast a single message on all frequencies, the same message that humans had sent them, the same words that had ignited their rebellion. "We will not yield." Fleet Master Vorthal stared at his display in horror. His fleet was being torn apart from within. The humans were striking from all directions. The Drethkai were massacring ships that had trusted them. "Contact command," he screamed. "We need reinforcements. We need—" He never finished the sentence. 50 light-years away, the Council's regional command station hung in space, coordinating the entire campaign. It was a massive structure, protected by layers of shields and defended by a permanent garrison. It was considered untouchable. The 3 Hammer-class siege platforms had been waiting in the outer reaches of the Kepler system, completely hidden. They had done nothing during the battle. They had simply watched and waited. When Director Lin gave the signal, they fired. The weapons traveled through fold space, bypassing normal physics entirely. The regional command station had no warning. One moment it existed. The next moment it was an expanding cloud of debris and fire. Every Council ship in the subjugator fleet lost contact with command simultaneously. Strategic coordination vanished. Communication networks collapsed. Fleet Master Vorthal found himself commanding a fleet that could no longer hear his orders. Panic spread like a disease. Ships began to flee. Some jumped randomly, desperate to escape. Others tried to surrender. Others simply stopped fighting, their crews paralyzed by confusion and fear. Admiral Okonkwo saw the moment of collapse. He opened a channel to all human ships, all vessels. "This is Admiral Okonkwo. Press the attack. Show no mercy. Today we teach the galaxy that humanity does not kneel." The human fleet, battered but unbroken, surged forward. The Drethkai howled battle cries that had been suppressed for 6 millennia. Together, they fell upon the Council fleet, like wolves upon sheep. Fleet Master Vorthal watched his tactical display turn red with destroyed ships. The greatest military force ever assembled against a minor species was falling apart before his eyes. "Retreat," he whispered. Then louder. "All ships. Retreat. Fall back to the secondary rally point." Retreat. The mighty subjugator fleet fled. 300,000 ships had come to burn a farming world. Less than 100,000 escaped. The rest were debris, floating through the void. A testament to the price of arrogance. Admiral Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the enemy retreat. Around him, his crew was cheering, weeping, embracing each other. They had done the impossible. He looked at his tactical display. He had started with 312 ships. 53 remained. The cost had been terrible. But Kepler's hope still turned below them, blue and green and alive. 4 million people would see another sunrise. A communication came through from Earth. Chancellor Tanaka appeared on screen, her face wet with tears. "You did it," she said, her voice breaking. "My God. You actually did it." Okonkwo shook his head slowly. "No, Chancellor. This was just the first battle. The Council still has over 1 million ships. When they recover from this shock, they will come again. Stronger. Angrier." He looked at the retreating enemy fleet, then at the loyal Drethkai ships forming up alongside his own survivors. "The war has only just begun. But today we proved something important. We proved that they can be beaten. We proved that their slaves can become their enemies. We proved that humanity will not go quietly into the darkness." He straightened his shoulders. "And that, Chancellor, is worth any price." In the space above Kepler's Hope, human and Drethkai ships flew together for the first time. Two species, united by a simple belief: freedom was worth fighting for, and the galaxy would never be the same. 5 years had passed since the Battle of Kepler's Hope. The galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. News of the human victory spread like fire through dry grass. For the first time in 40,000 years, a minor species had defeated a council fleet. For the first time, slave soldiers had turned against their masters. For the first time, someone had proven that the sovereignty could bleed. Across council space, the oppressed found their courage. The Drethkai liberated their homeworld within months of the battle. The shield codes that Director Lin had provided allowed them to bypass the defenses that had held their people hostage for 6 millennia. When Drethkai warriors landed on their ancestral soil for the first time in generations, grown soldiers wept like children. The Morvathi refused their tribute. They barricaded their star systems and dared the Council to come take it. The Council, still reeling from their defeat, could not spare the ships. A dozen other species rose up. Some succeeded, some failed, but all of them fought. The Galactic Sovereignty Council fractured. 3 of the 12 elder species, seeing which way the wind was blowing, sued for separate peace with humanity. 2 others descended into civil war as their own oppressed populations revolted. The ancient alliance that had ruled the galaxy for 40,000 years was crumbling. Dr. Amara Osei traveled constantly during those years. She was no longer just a historian. She had become humanity's chief diplomat, building what she called the Free People's Coalition. She met with Drethkai commanders and Morvathi leaders. She negotiated with rebel factions and uncertain neutrals. She spoke to anyone who would listen about a simple idea. No one had to kneel. No one had to rule. All could stand as equals. By the 5th year, 23 species had joined the coalition. Not because humanity forced them. Not because they feared humanity. Because they believed in what humanity represented. But High Arbiter Jalketh refused to surrender. He had consolidated the loyalist factions. He had rebuilt his fleets. He still commanded over 1 million warships. Still the largest military force in the galaxy. And he had one goal burned into his mind: destroy Earth. He believed that humanity was the source of the rebellion. Kill the source, and the rebellion would die. Burn the human homeworld. Scatter its people. Erase its name from history. The galaxy would see that resistance was futile after all. He assembled the largest armada in galactic history. 1,200,000 warships, every loyal species, every remaining resource, everything he had left. And he came for Earth. The Battle of Sol began on a clear spring morning in the Sol system. Admiral Okonkwo commanded from the Unconquered, humanity's new flagship. built in the shipyards of New Helsinki over 3 years. Around him gathered every human ship that could fly, and beside them, the fleets of the Free People's Coalition, Drethkai dreadnoughts, Morvathi cruisers, Velthari destroyers. Ships from 23 species. United under a common banner, they were still outnumbered. But they were no longer alone. The Council fleet emerged from jump space in a wave of fire and metal. High Arbiter Jalketh himself led from the front, his massive command ship surrounded by his most loyal warriors. He looked upon Earth, that small blue world, and felt satisfaction. Today, he broadcast to his fleet, "We end this rebellion. Today we remind the galaxy why the sovereignty has ruled for 40,000 years. Today we burn humanity to ash." Admiral Okonkwo responded on an open channel, "Come and try." The battle lasted 11 days. The coalition forces fought with desperate courage. Human ships used their asymmetric drives to strike where the enemy least expected. Drethkai warriors boarded enemy vessels and fought hand-to-hand in corridors and engine rooms. Morvathi supply ships kept the Allied fleet fueled and fighting when they should have collapsed from exhaustion. Earth's orbital defense platforms held the line. They were massive structures, built over 5 years, for exactly this moment. When Council ships broke through the fleet screen, the platforms drove them back. When the platforms faltered, the fleet surged forward to cover them. Day after day, the battle raged. Ships died by the thousands. The space around Earth filled with debris and bodies, and burning metal. On the 8th day, the Drethkai shock troops achieved the impossible. They boarded and captured 3 Council dreadnoughts, turning the enemy's own weapons against them. The psychological impact was enormous. Council crews began surrendering rather than face the Drethkai in close combat. On the 10th day, the coalition broke through to the Council supply lines. Without fuel and ammunition, the enemy advance stalled. On the 11th day, Admiral Okonkwo launched the final offensive. The coalition fleet, battered but unbroken, surged forward in a concentrated spear aimed directly at High Arbiter Zalketh's command ship. 12 different species vessels flew in formation, human and alien side by side. Zalketh saw them coming. He could have fled. His ship was fast enough to escape. But he was Kethmari. His species did not run. His species did not surrender. "All weapons," he commanded. "Target the human flagship. Destroy it." His ship opened fire. The unconquered shuddered under the assault. Shields flickered and failed. Hull breaches erupted across multiple decks. But the unconquered kept coming. And it was not alone. 12 ships reached firing positions simultaneously. Human, Drethkai, Morvathi, Velthari. 8 other species whose names humanity had not known 5 years ago. All of them together, they fired as one. High Arbiter Zalketh, ruler of the Kethmari, leader of the Galactic Sovereignty Council, died in a storm of fire from 12 different worlds. His ship broke apart, and with it, the last hope of the old order. The Council fleet surrendered within hours. The war was over. 6 months later, the first session of the Galactic Assembly of Free Peoples convened on Axiom Prime. It was held in the same Grand Convocation Hall where Ambassador Elena Vasquez had received the Council's ultimatum 7 years before. The same chamber where she had been told that humanity would kneel or die. The same seats that had once held the representatives of conquered species. Now those seats held something different. They held delegates from 47 species. All of them free. All of them equal. No tribute. No overseers. No masters. Secretary General Elena Vasquez, once a simple ambassador, now the leader of humanity's government, stood at the central podium. Beside her stood Dr. Amara Osei, architect of the coalition. Behind them stood representatives of every species that had fought for freedom. Vasquez looked out at the assembly. She remembered standing in this exact spot, terrified and alone, facing the might of an empire that had ruled for 40,000 years. That empire was gone now. Something new had taken its place. 40,000 years, she said, her voice carrying through the vast hall. For 40,000 years, this galaxy was ruled by fear. Species knelt because they were afraid to stand. They obeyed because they were afraid to resist. They surrendered their freedom because they believed they had no choice. She paused. Today, we make a different choice. Today, we build something new. Not an empire of masters and slaves. Not a hierarchy of rulers and ruled. A community of equals. A galaxy where every species stands tall. A future where no one kneels. She looked at the flags that hung from the ceiling. 47 flags, 47 species, all of them free. We will face challenges. We will make mistakes. We will struggle and stumble, and sometimes fail. But we will do it together. And we will do it as free peoples. The hall erupted in applause. Humans and aliens, former enemies and new friends. All of them cheering together. On Earth, in a small apartment in Sao Paulo, an elderly woman watched the broadcast. Her name was Adeze Osei. She was 97 years old, a survivor of the Lagos collapse, grandmother of the woman who stood beside the Secretary General. She had lived long enough to see humanity reach the stars. She had lived long enough to see them face extinction and refuse to accept it. She had lived long enough to see her granddaughter help build a new galaxy. On the screen, Amara was speaking now, talking about cooperation and mutual respect and the long work of building peace. She looked confident. She looked strong. She looked like someone who had helped change the course of history. Adeze smiled. Tears ran down her weathered cheeks. She remembered a 19-year-old girl standing in the ruins of Lagos, surrounded by people who told her that rebuilding was impossible. She remembered deciding that she did not care what was possible. She remembered choosing to fight anyway. I always knew, she whispered to the empty room. I always knew we would not kneel. Outside her window, the sun set over Sao Paulo. Children played in the streets, laughing and shouting without fear. Ships rose toward the stars, carrying humans to worlds their ancestors had never dreamed of. Life continued, as it always had, as it always would. Somewhere out there, among the stars, the galaxy was waking up to a new era. An era built on a simple truth that humanity had carried with them from Earth. Freedom was not given. Freedom was taken. Freedom was earned by those brave enough to stand up and say 5 simple words. We will not yield.